safety of children returning to school has been a bone of contention worldwide. Many have been pushing for them to return to the classroom, saying there's evidence that they're less susceptible to the virus. Meanwhile, some parents are simply afraid. Futurist Graeme Codrington has been watching the latest research with interest. He joins me now for more. Graeme, good evening, and thank you so much for your time on The Pulse. There seems to be very conflicting views when it comes to the issue of children, and South Africa has not been exempt from that debate.
Absolutely, Cathy. As you know, our team at Tomorrow Today have been watching what's happening in different parts of the world. And when the virus hit a few months ago, most of the Northern Hemisphere countries were coming to the end of their school year. They start their school year in August or September. And so it was a very different situation for them than it was for us here in the Southern Hemisphere, because they were just closing out a year, looking forward to the end of the holidays. Now, of course, they are all thinking about what happens when schools go back in a few weeks' time. And so the researchers are coming out, the countries all across the Northern Hemisphere are beginning to have the conversation that we have already been having for a few weeks and months here in South Africa. And the fascinating insight that is emerging, and I found it really fascinating to listen to Professor Karim just a few minutes ago on the program, where he was talking about people like himself who, this is his job, he's one of the world experts in infectious diseases, and even day by day, he is learning new things. And I think one of the new things that has emerged in the last few weeks is an understanding of the genetic receptors. I'm not a medical doctor, but I think it's called the ACE2 receptor that is in your lungs, and that's where the SARS-CoV virus actually connects to. And apparently children under the age of 10 don't have these receptors, or don't have them in a way that makes them susceptible to COVID-19. Doesn't mean children can't get it, but it does mean that they are very unlikely to get it. And even more importantly, they are unlikely to spread it to anybody else. And so countries around the world, Cathy, that are doing a good job, if we look at their numbers and we look at their infections, a lot of them in Europe, in obviously New Zealand and different parts of Asia, those countries have said that children under the age of 10 can return to school. Obviously, the teachers have to take precautions. The schools have to do as much as you can do with young children to enforce the physical distancing and the mask wearing and the sanitizing. But they're fairly confident that children will be fine. The big issue is when you get to teenagers and young adults, high schools and universities. The young people themselves might be okay. Again, they can get the disease and some of them will get severe symptoms, but most young people seem to be able to handle the disease in their bodies fairly well. The problem is, of course, that they become spreaders of the virus when they get home to their parents. They spread it to the teachers at school. So, at the moment, it's really difficult to know what to do about it. The scientists are not agreed on this. We think younger children will be certainly safer than teenagers and young adults, but this puts huge pressure on us as a society as we make these decisions, and we don't yet have the clarity, even as we saw Professor Karim saying, we're still learning so much about this virus at the moment.
Sometimes, Graeme, part of the moment that we're in also requires a great deal of flexibility and perhaps not being committed to any particular outcome, especially where schooling is concerned. What is the international best practice? So what are other countries doing? How are they dealing with the evolving information, the maybe increasing number of young people who might be contracting COVID-19 and the subsequent threats that they pose to their families?
Cathy, there's a real difference between countries that have been able to control the disease so far. I'm thinking of countries like Austria and Germany, Norway, New Zealand, South Korea. They have attempted to get schools back, and basically you're absolutely right. each school has to make a decision on its own. So in South Korea a few weeks ago, they opened the schools, and then about a quarter of the schools closed again fairly quickly to go back into a 2-week quarantine because they had a number of COVID cases. If you look across at the United States, at certainly states like New York and California and Washington State, where they have been epicenters so far of the disease,